Okay, was your friend doing business with your enemy?
You asking me?
Yeah.
I can't go to the Max B party because you're my friend. Yeah,
Why?
because you my fucking friend, nigga.
What?
Yeah, talk about it. Cause
Oh
I'm a,
man,
cause
this
let
guy,
me explain something to you.
this
I'm a
guy,
loyal nigga
God
at the end of the
damn.
day. Before music,
What
let
this
me
was
tell you
not.
something.
What
Let me
we
tell you
was.
something. Let me.
Maino didn't flinch when the atmosphere shifted. What began as a routine exchange turned serious within seconds, and you could see the change happen in real time. His posture tightened, the easy energy disappeared. He wasn't performing for anyone in that room, wasn't working the crowd, wasn't looking for a reaction. His tone stayed level, but there was unmistakable weight behind every word he chose. This wasn't about clout or cameras. This was about standing on something real and refusing to let anyone pull him off it. He spoke about principles, about keeping your integrity intact when your name is on the line. And the conviction in his delivery made it clear these weren't rehearsed words. He meant them. No hesitation, no wavering. Even before things escalated, the tension was already present. Not loud, not explosive, just real. The kind of quiet pressure that makes everyone nearby unconsciously stop what they're doing and start paying attention. Then Jim Jones stepped forward. That single movement changed the entire dynamic of the room. The space between them collapsed. What had been a routine exchange instantly became something else entirely, a direct face-to-face standoff with zero distance and nowhere to go. Jim's voice sharpened, his presence expanded. He wasn't just responding at that point, he was asserting himself, making sure every word he delivered landed with full force. The room reacted without thinking. Conversation stopped mid-sentence, heads turned, eyes locked onto that moment because the energy radiating off it felt like it could tip at any second. When someone closes that kind of distance, when a voice rises to that level, very little separates a confrontation from something far worse. But Maino didn't move, not one step back, not even a slight shift in his stance. He stayed exactly where he was, holding eye contact, responding with calm and precision. No raised voice, no sudden reaction, no attempt to match the aggression, just complete grounded composure. And that's what made the moment genuinely intense. Because most people in that position either back down or escalate. He did neither. He held firm. Jim Jones kept pressing, leaning in, voice elevated, making absolutely clear he had no intention of standing down. Maino matched it his own way, not through volume, but through presence. The standoff ran entirely on energy, no physical contact, but close enough that everyone watching knew it was possible. People around them began to shift. Some moved in, ready to intervene if the situation broke. Others stayed still, reading every second carefully, because at that point the words barely mattered anymore. It was all body language, eye contact, and tone, and who was going to give ground first? Neither one did. The intensity kept climbing. Jim Jones made his position crystal clear, without softening a single edge. He wasn't there to keep things comfortable. He was there to make a statement. Maino stayed composed throughout, showing that no amount of pressure was going to rattle him. That kind of steadiness under real tension is rare, and it doesn't go unnoticed. The fact that all of this unfolded in public made everything feel heavier. Cameras were running, people were watching. In that kind of environment, pride locks in, ego follows right behind it, and that combination is exactly what accelerates situations past the point of no return. At one point, it genuinely looked like it might turn physical. The space between them was almost nothing. The energy peaked. You could read it in the faces of everyone around them, people bracing, preparing, waiting for the moment to break open. But it didn't cross that line. Whether it was the people nearby ready to step in, or both men silently recognizing how far things had already gone, it stopped, just barely before the edge. But that didn't matter much, because the moment had already done everything it was going to do. The tension had already saturated the room. And once something like that happens publicly, it doesn't stay contained. Clips spread almost immediately, multiple angles, slow-motion breakdowns, frame-by-frame analysis, people dissecting every second of it. Who moved first? Who held their ground? Who looked more composed? The internet turned it into a full conversation by the next morning. Some sided with Jim Jones, arguing he stood on respect and made it clear he wasn't going to be dismissed. Others felt that closing the distance the way he did crossed a line and turned something that could have stayed verbal into something unnecessary. But a large portion of the conversation centered on Maino, specifically on how uncommon it is to see someone absorb that level of pressure without flinching or overreacting. That kind of control gets noticed, especially in a moment that raw. Opinions split, and that division is exactly what kept the moment alive. There was no clean answer. Both sides had a legitimate case, and when a moment doesn't have a clear-cut outcome, people keep returning to it. But beyond the confrontation itself, what stood out most was the speed of it all. One moment completely ordinary, the next a full standoff. That's how narrow that line actually is. In a public space where pride, pressure, and strong personalities all converge, it takes almost nothing. A tone shift, a single step forward, one look read the wrong way. That's the entire margin. After it was over, neither of them walked it back. Jim Jones carried himself with the same energy he brought into it, direct, unapologetic, standing fully on every move he made. In his view, stepping forward wasn't crossing any line, it was eliminating any confusion about where he stood. Maino didn't chase the moment afterwards, didn't add anything extra, didn't go online to explain or justify himself. The way he handled it in real time was the statement. That silence afterwards spoke as loudly as anything he could have said publicly. That contrast is what hits so hard. One man applying pressure directly and without apology, the other absorbing it without breaking. Two completely different approaches, both executed with the same intensity. And that's why the conversation kept growing. Not simply because it nearly turned physical, but because of what it revealed about composure, about ego, about how fast things can spiral when respect, pride, and a public audience are all present in the same space at the same time. Even now, it doesn't feel finished, because when something builds to that level and stops just before the breaking point, it doesn't feel resolved. It feels suspended, like it's still sitting there, waiting. And if those two cross paths again, everyone already understands it won't take much to bring that same energy right back to the same edge. That unresolved pause is what keeps it circulating, because nothing was actually settled, no resolution, no moment where both sides stepped back and closed it out cleanly. It just stopped, right before the line. Maino moved forward carrying the same composure he had in that moment, controlled, unbothered, not reaching for anything additional. Jim Jones stayed equally consistent, no softening, no walking anything back, standing on every bit of it. And that difference in how each of them moved afterwards is precisely why the conversation never stopped growing. People weren't just reacting to the moment anymore, they were reacting to what it meant. Some read it as a test of who could apply pressure. Others saw it as a test of who could hold themselves together when things got real. Depending on your perspective, both men demonstrated a different kind of strength. But what kept it circulating more than anything else was how genuine it felt. Nothing about that moment looked manufactured. No over-the-top reactions, no performance for the cameras, just two men standing on what they believed in real time, with no filter. And that kind of authenticity is rare, especially when the cameras are already rolling. Most situations either get softened for comfort or blown out of proportion for clicks. This one did neither. That's why people kept returning to it, not just to see what happened, but to experience the feeling of it again. The tension, the silence between words, the way the entire energy of the room shifted in real time. All of it. And the more it spread, the more layers people started attaching to it. Some began pulling up old interviews, past interactions, previous moments of friction, trying to piece together whether this had been building long before it finally surfaced. Because confrontations like that rarely appear from nowhere. There's almost always something underneath that's been collecting pressure until it finally finds a way out. Whether that's the case here or not, it didn't feel like a random disagreement. It felt like two entirely different mindsets colliding. Jim Jones representing direct pressure, step forward, say it plainly, make your presence impossible to ignore. Maino representing controlled resistance, stand still, don't fold, don't let the moment pull you away from yourself. When those two approaches meet in a public space, there's no neutral outcome. It's going to feel intense regardless of how it starts. Even now, the moment still carries weight, precisely because it didn't go all the way, but got close enough that everyone watching could see exactly where it was headed. And sometimes that's what stays with people longest. Not what happened, but what almost happened. That almost is what keeps the door open. Because now, if those two cross paths again, there's already something between them, a moment people remember. A moment that changed the starting point of every interaction that follows. The next time won't begin from zero, it'll begin from here, and that means the tension.
That edge is exactly what people haven't been able to let go of. Because once a moment like that gets locked into people's memory, it doesn't fade the way ordinary situations do. It replays differently. Every look, every pause, every subtle shift in tone starts carrying more meaning the more you revisit it. And that's exactly what's been happening. The clip didn't just circulate, it stuck. Maino's presence in that moment keeps getting referenced for a reason. Not because he was louder or more aggressive, but because he wasn't. He didn't let the pressure shape his response. He stayed exactly where he was mentally, no matter how close things got physically. That kind of discipline becomes the lasting story, especially when everything surrounding it felt like it was seconds away from breaking open. Jim Jones left just as strong an impression, but for an entirely different reason. He didn't hesitate. He didn't create distance. He stepped directly into the space and let his presence do the talking. For a lot of people, that reads as dominance, as making sure there's absolutely no room for misreading the situation. It's a statement that doesn't need anything extra wrapped around it. And that's precisely why the conversation never found a stopping point. Because both of those things can be true simultaneously. One person applying pressure, the other refusing to be moved by it. There's no clear winner in that dynamic. It comes down to what you value more, force or restraint, intensity or composure. As more time passes, the moment begins shifting from what happened into what it represented. People start using it as a reference. It gets brought up in conversations about respect, about handling pressure, about what it actually looks like to stand your ground when everything around you is pushing for a reaction. That's when a single moment becomes bigger than itself, when it stops being about two specific people and starts being used as an example of a mindset, a way of carrying yourself under pressure. But even with all of that, there's still something unfinished about it. No real follow-up, no genuine closure, just distance after intensity. And that kind of ending leaves space. Space for interpretation, space for speculation, and most importantly, space for it to happen again. Because if that moment made one thing clear, it's that neither of these men is built to step back easily. That's already been established. So if another situation brings them face to face, all of that history returns instantly. There's no gradual build, no reading the room phase. It'll already be there from the first second. And that's what keeps people watching. Not just for what already happened, but for what could come next. Because moments like that don't simply disappear. They settle beneath the surface, they accumulate, and sometimes they come back around when no one's expecting it. Right now, things are quiet, but quiet isn't the same as finished. And everyone paying attention knows it wouldn't take much for that same tension to rise again. Just as fast, just as concentrated, and maybe next time without anything stopping it at the edge. That maybe next time is exactly what keeps the story alive. Because now it's grown beyond the moment itself. It's about anticipation. People aren't just replaying what already happened. They're thinking about what happens if it happens again. Same energy, same proximity, but with nothing to interrupt it. No pause in the tension. That's where things become genuinely unpredictable. Maino already demonstrated he's not the type to break under pressure. That part is established. He can hold his position, stay composed, and keep his words measured even when everything around him is demanding a reaction. That kind of discipline doesn't weaken with time. If anything, it sharpens. Because now he knows exactly what that pressure feels like and how to move through it. Jim Jones already showed he's willing to close distance without hesitation. He's not calculating how it might look or second-guessing the approach. He moves forward and lets his presence speak first. For a lot of people, that energy doesn't pull itself back either. If anything, it becomes more direct the next time around. So if those same two forces meet again, there's no learning curve. It's immediate. And that's what makes it feel unfinished rather than resolved. Even the language people use when discussing it now carries that tone. It's not referred to as something that happened and ended. It's described as something that could have become something else entirely. That distinction matters because it keeps the door open in people's minds. And when that door stays open, attention doesn't leave. The footage keeps getting revisited. New audiences keep finding it with fresh eyes, forming opinions without any connection to the original moment, picking sides, debating it, adding to the conversation. That's how it keeps expanding without anything new actually occurring, just off the weight of how it felt. And the feeling was real. There was no buffer in that moment, no separation from the tension, just two people standing directly in front of each other, fully aware of the space they occupied and the eyes that were on them. That kind of environment amplifies everything. Words land harder, movements carry more meaning, seconds stretch. And when two strong personalities are placed in exactly that environment, reaching that edge again, if given the opportunity, feels almost inevitable. Right now, nothing has pushed it back there. No second confrontation, no follow-up moment carrying the same weight. But the absence of that doesn't close the story. It dilds it. Because now there's a reference point, a shared memory that both sides and everyone watching carries forward. That alone changes how any future interaction unfolds. There's history now. There's tension already sitting beneath the surface before a single word gets spoken. And that's the part that holds people's attention. Not just what happened, but what happens if it happens again. Because if that line gets crossed next time, it won't feel sudden. It'll feel like something that was already on its way there. That's why the moment still matters. Not because it ended, but because it didn't fully. And that unfinished quality is what keeps everything right on edge. When a moment doesn't fully close, it leaves a particular kind of pressure behind. Not loud, not visible on the surface, just present, sitting quietly in the background. And the longer it sits, the more it builds into something people expect to resurface. Maino already proved he can stand inside that pressure without being changed by it. That's not something people forget. The way he held his ground, stayed measured, and refused